Hey guys, I'm gonna start with just a default cube today. So I'm just gonna convert these, delete all the other objects, and I'm going to just start shading and make a mask right here. And we're gonna make it the shape of the donut, the frosting on top, and the sprinkles. So yeah, let's get started. It's important first go to edit, preferences, add-ons, and then search for node, and node wrangler, make sure that's checked. Yeah, so if I go into material preview, I'm just gonna create the mask for the donut. Right now I'm just using the Eevee renderer, so we're not messing with the displacement yet, because I'm just gonna figure out what that mask looks like, and when it comes to that, Eevee's a bit faster. So if I use this gradient and I change it to spherical, we get nothing. And that is, let's see, let's figure out why that is. If I separate it along the, it's because I believe the sphere takes place in that 3D space. So if I like, if I added to it, so there's a sphere, but it's cutting through that cube. That's what I believe is going on. So I just want it to go through the top and the bottom. So I'm going to take out this z-axis, which goes up and down if we look at this axis right here. So I'm going to use the separate and combine and just leave out the z-axis. So now we have a circle right there. And I'm going to create the donut. I could use a color ramp, but I'm instead going to use this RGB curve. Yeah, so a donut is essentially a torus, and just like the this torus object, you can adjust the inner part and the outer part. Yeah, and so you can bring this in, bring this out, and in this case we won't know if it's well-rounded until we try it out with the displacement. Let's cut that out. So I'm going to start that up, so VD, so vector, shift A to add vector displacement to add that, and let's first plug into the height, see how it looks. So I'm going to turn on cycles, and then we also need to activate displacement under settings, displacement right here. It says displacement if we drag this out, displacement only. And then we won't see anything in here unless we go to rendered, and also the cube doesn't have any geometry to work with. So we're going to go to edit mode and subdivide it a bunch of times. And we can use a modifier also. So Control 3 adds 3 subdivisions on this modifier right here. And you can adjust that to real quick if I'm in the viewport, I think. Yeah, so 3, and that goes up to 5. Yeah, and that's not exactly what we want, and it's because, well, this, first of all, needs to be at 0, so it sits at the top, and then we want to flatten this cube, so I want to bring these two sides together. And to do that, I'm going to take this displacement and use a vector add node, so it's under converter vector math, and then its first setting is to add, and we're going to use that. So, and then the vector mapping node, bring that in there, and because this is already at 1 by 1, these should, instead of typically the regular shape of something should be 1, but in this case it's 0, and I want that to be -1. And it's not shifting yet because we need to set the object coordinates, so it's important that, because this default is generated, so now it might not look like it, but it's actually bringing those planes in together. And it doesn't look like that because we need to resolve one thing where is taking the sides of this. And whenever you use these object coordinates, it's always before it's displaced. So if I separate this, I'm just going to use this to mask out the top and the bottom. So normal is about the face direction. If you said what direction each of these sides is facing, that's what a normal is. And that's helpful in shading and modeling. Let's see. So yeah, and I'm going to use a greater than node, and that's the go-to for masking things out. And as we can see, it's still displaced like this. So what we need to do is, so we have this gradient, and we have this gradient, and we don't really know what, better indication of what it looks like is from a top view. So if I multiply these, they'll combine, become something darker. Yeah, and then we want this to be close to 0 as possible without actually being 0, I believe. So if we look at this, let's turn off displacement. I want to change this to simple. I think that might be what's throwing it off. Let's see. Oh, wrong. So, yeah. Let's see. If I take this, yeah. It's the cost of doing stuff live is people, as you'll know when you mess up. So, okay, ignore this. I mean, this is already black, so. So yeah, what the issue is this is negative. It has some negative values coming from here. I think. Let's see. Yeah. So this needs to be clamped. If it's not, you're getting. It just means that it's all negative values are going to be switched to 0. So they won't count, which is how a typical image would work. But vectors are like infinite position, so that's why it's different. So we have this gradient texture. It's only coming off of one side, so how can we fix that? If you look at this mask, yeah, it's because this is only going one direction. We can fix that with absolute value. So with math, positive becomes negative. So this, just remember this helps flip things. Right now this is a rather tall donut, so let's just bring that curve right down, and then maybe bring it out along the rim. And let's bring this inner part in. I guess the inner part is a bit smaller. Yeah, so there we have the shape of our donut, and while we're right here, while we're working with that, we can make the top part of the donut. So we still have that gradient, not from the normal, sorry, it's right here, and then so I'm going to multiply this by, yes, again, so down here, if I use this is just going to be the normal facing upwards. So if I turn that all the way up, it'll just mask out the top. I can use this color ramp So now we have a mask for where the jelly is going to be. Yeah, so that's nice. And then, yeah, and then I'm going to cut off the inner part. So let's see. So let's bring this profile out a little bit. Just make it a little rounder. And yeah, so it's looking a lot smoother with the subdivision. Just, I'll change that to shade smooth. So that's just the shading we want. And then change this to ease, so it's smoother on the edges. And I want this whole donut to be kind of lumpy, because this is yeah, and so to do that, I'm gonna add some distortion. So with that, use linear light right down here. So the eye is underlined, so you can just quickly switch that to linear light, and then use a Musgrave texture. So texture, then Musgrave, use underlined. So that's how I did that quickly. And look, yeah, so that's a mess, right? And if I bring it right here, and then I think the top and bottom are going to end up disagreeing with each other. If we look at this, to see if it matches up, I'm going to start setting up the materials. So I'm going to use this mix shader, and then I'm going to use a principled BSDF and transparent BSDF. So this will be invisible, and this one will be shown. Right now it's a factor between the two, but I'm going to use this mask. Wait, whoa, not that mask. Maybe I need this. Okay, that's from the normal, and then okay, yeah, from this, I'm gonna create another branch of that, because I'm going to use the less than or greater than again to create a mask there. And if this is plugged into the factor, you can see how much it's masking. I believe I want this to be something close to 0, so 0.01. We'll be adjusting that because the points where that meet isn't going to be perfect. So let's add a light. I think it's the opposite of what we want right now. So let's just swap these out. Yeah, so we can adjust this so it's closer. If we notice, okay, so these are meeting in the middle, and yeah, so they don't meet up here if you see this straight line, and that's because the z-axis, so we want to cut that out. Let's see if we can just shift this in here. It's that same removal. Yeah. So it's looking a bit too fried, I guess. I guess donuts are fried typically. But let's tone that down a little. I don't want to be so lumpy, you know. And then yeah, so that should be good. And I think there's no lumpiness from top to bottom, and I'm fine with that. The cases of, for the sake of simplicity, I think you still get the impression that you want in this case. So if I'm masking this, Yeah, so I actually want to use this so I have that hole in the middle. So look at that. That's what we're getting. Okay, so these aren't meeting, so I need to, yeah, because the color ramp threw things off, so I need to check that that mask lines up right there. Change that to 0, what do we get? Yeah, so I think because, and this is all because I'm using a plane that's subdivided, and like, you know, it's a horrible, if you were to make this for games or film, this is not the way to do it. You're gonna want to use 3D modeling, watch any of my other videos. A lot of my other videos cover things that I find for optimized 3D modeling, so I'm gonna be making a lot more for that. Yeah, so, but yeah, so this is just a plane, so it doesn't, it looks great, but you're using a lot of more geometry than you would need to, and it doesn't follow the form. That's why we have those jagged edges there, because it's just a subdivided cube. So, yeah, so back to this jelly donut. It's not jelly, yeah, pink frosting, right? So if I use this greater than node, this will be the mask for the frosting. So again, this makes sure that there's going to be a straight line on there. And just adjust that. More on the outer rim, right? So if we look from a top view, we don't want that. So these pixels are getting the mapping from there, and I think that's what's messing things up. So if I subdivide this more, perhaps that issue starts to disappear more. Try to bring in, if I look at this, okay, so that, yeah, here's the mistake, is again that instead of the other one. So yeah, let's bring that in. Yeah. 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 I think already having the wobbliness and the distortion kind of helps with that impression of the wobbliness, like in the frosting. We could add a distortion, another distortion in this, but I'm trying to get this done by 8:15, so just you know, we'll see what little details like that, how much I can add at the end. It's really nice just to do something every day without, you know, worrying how good it's gonna be, but just like seeing how much you can get done in a small amount of time. Yeah, I think there's still plenty to be learned, even if I didn't finish this, but you know, I've been able to finish all of the other ones in about 50 minutes. So I think I should be able to get this done. Yeah, fingers crossed. So bring that in there. Frosting, be more rough, and in the bump we can use this gradient. So we want maybe some part on the rim right there, and this is a really sharp line, but we can see that gradient right there. This needs to go through the conversion of the bump node. This goes into height, and yes, now we can see how much fall off we're getting, so just gonna bring that closer to the edge. And then, so let's try to figure out why this is such a sharp line. If we bring this to a darker value, I think that can fade it out. On the bump node, things tend to just be sharp if you don't turn down this distance. So this will smooth things out, always. And yeah, just turn down the strength. And I think it'd be good to, combine this with a smooth Voronoi texture. So if I plug this into the height, so it creates a texture like this. Just wait a sec, there, like this, and then smooth the edge, and then turn that down a little bit, so it's still a little bit sharp on the edges, and then adjust that size. The mapping is going to be stretched out here, so we're going to use a position node. Now we can actually bring that in quite a bit. So that's good. And then let's see what the final result is. So we have a lumpier donut, but let's turn this down a little bit because I want it to be pretty subtle. Another thing we can do is, if we were to shine light through this is just sugar. So like, I think having a subsurface that's more reddish but like close to white. So even though this is radius, these affect the color. So bringing that to so RGB, so red is the most, and then they're all about 1. And this is slight, pink. This has a slightly blue, so I'll bring that to 1 too, and just there's the absence of the green. With that subsurface, you can kind of see it around the edges, maybe especially there, which is an exaggeration of what we want. We're not going to see it on that edge, it's just going to be right here. And it's up to saturation just a little bit. Yeah. Right, so, and let's work on this bread texture, the breading. So for that, to add color, you can use this color ramp, and most programs call it a gradient. Let's see if this is, so this is going to give us the range that we want. Just going back to that node again, and so let's just set the highest and lowest, and then we can go ahead and add the values in between. So this is kind of orangish, and we won't see that until we go in here. It's quicker to just preview the color ramp instead of the material. A lot update faster. It doesn't have to do all those surface calculations for like reflection. And then, excuse me, my throat's just waking up. So if we just put that in there, I think we sharpen that end a little bit, change it to ease, just so it's smoother. We're not even going to see the top, but we're going to see the bottom. Maybe we can darken this. So I think that's pretty good for now. And I'm going to add some impression of like hue variation in that. So to do that, we're just going to use mix linear light. So it's essentially just adding values up and down from that direction, and that's why we use it for distortion, because it's just moving things from a certain direction. So we're going to use texture noise. And if I sample this, then we can see the difference. Here, you can add the detail. So detail and roughness, it just adds noise within noise. And yeah, so I'm liking that. You can see the end result of this material right here. So it's probably a little too shiny. And definitely going to want to add subsurface. Most food does. I mean, animals and vegetables and stuff are especially known for having that, but the thing that makes things appetizing is like the hint that there's something juicy inside of it, and subsurface is revealing those, is the light quality of revealing those effects from underneath. And yeah, so maybe we could turn up this light a bit, maybe just to see more of that effect. Yeah, so we can see it's coming out, and it's coming out, yeah, we can see that on the rim right there. So, yeah, and then we can add some bump. Let's just use the noise texture. And then make sure it's plugged in height and not normal right here. Well, that's the default. And then now that I see it, the mapping could be set to position instead. Let's just check what this noise looks like. Yeah, so we're gonna bring the scale out. That looks good to me. And then I'm going to be adjusting the bump. I think, yeah, distance is, I like to do that one first because it smooths things out and it does slightly affect the strength. Yeah. We could turn down the subsurface a little. So that's looking, I'm happy with that. And if we look at this, we now have frosting. Now finally, for the icing on the cake, well, the sprinkles. Yeah, so just real quick before we just to completely neglect this, I'm gonna turn up this greater than right here. Just try to bring that to 0. So if that straight line right there, so let's go a little bit negative, so negative 0.002. Let's just try that. Let's bring that in decimal. So there's a closed line, and it's just so sharp that you might not notice that. I mean, you almost see it on here, right? So, ooh, yeah. I'm gonna have some breakfast after this. American breakfast with all of the sugar, you know. So another mix shader is going to become the sprinkles. So, oh, and here's a cool etiquette thing. So if you do Control H, it just shows, it hides all the material qualities except for the ones being used by textures. So it's not going to show the base color, but just the inputs. Not just like the solid values that have been changed. I think if you press Control H, you can unhide that. I think for this one, it'd be nice to have a little bit of variation in this color. So I'm going to use a color ramp. Control C over something. You don't even know, you need to click on the color first. Just Control C, and then same over here, but then we'll take the saturation out to bring it closer to white, value up, and then distance in. I think we'll get even like a more authentic like hue variation in it. Let's try flipping that. So the difference is pretty subtle. This is more saturated. Yeah, and then yeah. So finally, let's make the sprinkles. Typically, so if you want them to wrap around, you're gonna get some distortion unless you use object position. But for the scattering of these, I'm not sure how to. The issue with using position on curved things for scattering is that essentially this is like an MRI scan where when you move through it, the coordinates move through, which is pretty cool when you have like Voronoi, which is the texture we're going to be using for this. Because if I just move it through, yeah, and we can see this better if we go into material view and just move it around. So here you see the displacement's off, and that's because we're not using the cycles render in this case. But yeah, so it just like scans through. It's a 3D material that you're moving through, and so we're going to use instead this material. Like this is 3D material, but it moves with the object, so that's why it's called object. But it's very similar to position if the object's at 0, 0. And so I'm going to take out that x-axis to make it basically 2D. So separate. Oh wait. Separate and combine right here. Take out the z-axis just like we did in the beginning. So it just looks like that. And if we take a gradient. So here's a gradient texture, and so if we look at this, we can mirror it, subtract absolute value, and then I think we actually want to put these before this. Let's try that. No. Again, this is a single value, so that'll work. You can use actually the vector. No, I think we'll just mirror this does it in multiple directions. So notice this vector output has these 3 values in it. Absolute mirrors all of them. Yeah. So, yeah, what I'm going to do is take this color ramp, going to flip it, and then this is going to be our sprinkle. So it's just going to be a straight line, and I'm going to use this distance to cut it off. So we're going to flip this one too, also. So, yeah, when I multiply that, it'll fade the edges. So we'll see. Yeah, let's see this play out. Right here, I can change the position with subtract, I think. So if I change this to subtract and put that in there and then plug that into here. Okay, so this isn't giving us the result we want. Let's see what this gradient looks like. Yeah, so we're only getting negative values. Alright, so I'm gonna have to think this out a little more. If I let's try plugging this into here, and then so we have both sides here, and then with absolute value here we have both sides to work with, and then if we go through all these, we finally get this. And tying that up, I think that's a good approximation of the thickness of sprinkles. So if we multiply, yeah, and then what we're missing here is the rotation. So to that, I'm just gonna do vector mapping, and start rotating it right here. And then I'm gonna plug this into the z-axis because it's gonna rotate around this top axis. So that kind of, so this is what it looks like before we made the changes, and then yeah. So let's figure out. Oh, because I have it in scale. Because yeah. If I multiply this, we can, change the intensity of the rotation. So yeah, let's see if that's giving us the result we want. Nope. I think that's because let's try putting the absolute value after this because it seems to be mirroring it. Let's just copy this over, cut it out, and plug that back into the gradient texture. Yeah, so we're getting some variation in the rotation. We can increase this, I think. Let's try pi. Pi will give you the largest extent because the rotations are in radians, and that uses pi. So pi is 180 degrees, which is the most we'd rotate it. We could do 2 pi to rotate it 360 degrees. I mean, these are all would be then made become all values between 0 and 360. So because these are all random values again, if we look back at there. And then finally we can multiply these together. So if I add this node and plug in the distance right here, we have that. Oh, and we need to flip that, which I did right here. So this color invert node, but I think I'll just use a gradient because we want to just make sure that edge works. So inverting it, we can also do it by flipping the color ramp right here. So there we have our sprinkles, and you could do this a few times if you want to layer it. Funny thing, in the tutorial, the donut tutorials, you use it to create particle systems, and the unfortunate thing about the particle system is you can't prevent things from overlapping without manually editing them. So this is kind of funny because in Voronoi you can't have things overlap. They're kind of confined in these cages. But I don't really have time to layer them. Well, let's see if I do at the end. But you would basically just copy this and make another mask, and just change the position a little bit. And it wouldn't be perfect. Like if you add two things together, if they cross, there'd be a little bump where they meet, extra bump. Okay, so let's plug it into here. Again, we're gonna mask it out with that greater than, and put in a factor. This value. It's looking pretty ricey. So let's, so if we take this edge and we use a smooth minimum, we can actually smooth out the edges, which is, let's see if, I hope this works. Yeah, so, and then I think to adjust that tip, we can bring that up. Yeah, it's looking sprinkly. Let's create the principle of material. And this is also going to be multiplied by the top frosting, because I don't want it to go outer here. We see this is overlapping there, but yeah, creating that it's kind of limited. There's, you know, it would just require more computations, which would probably be disproportionate to like how much you're actually using it. So here's the greater than node that masked that out. So let's just trace that back. So Control Shift is a good way of just bringing node all the way across. So right here, I'm going to Shift, right click and drag to add that reroute node. Just plug that in there. If I look at this, now we don't have all those streaks going down the side. And that's going to be our mask. So we have some cutoff points. So this isn't perfect, but you know, work with what we can do. Yeah, so let's create it. We want to make a color with random color, a material with random color. So for the sprinkles. So I'm going to use gradient, and let's change this to blue and then red. So this is based on the hue, and if we change this from RGB to HSV, it actually shifts it instead by value. So now we're getting pink in the middle. So if we add one right there, see how it actually goes through the other color spaces. Yeah, so this blue isn't quite so dark, so I'm gonna make that like that. Gonna get a white one, and then let's put the green one over here. And go back to RGB and then change it to constant. Maybe we can instead just, you know, so that if we don't have the gradient, we make sure that there's a set number of different colors. I'm just gonna make this look more simple on the eye. So let's try to even these out. Distribute stops evenly, can do, but it leaves out this red one. So I guess we can just add another right here, and then do that again. And it makes sense to distribute it there, but it's not taking into account that this is constant, which it just did right there. Let's try that again. Oh, distribute stops evenly. Okay. That's looking good. If we, yeah. So that's going to be the color of the sprinkles, and then it'll all be masked out, so that won't really matter. But we don't need to plug in the height because that's already going to be part of the displacement. But yeah, we need to set that up too. So just going to bring these nodes out, and so these are going to sit on top of it. If we go back into rendered view, so we're going to add, so another mix node right here, add, we'll shift it up. So this smooth minimum, remember when we smoothed out the sprinkles, we got the texture you're about to see. Yeah, and so it's just taking that up all those places. Let's turn that way down. And yeah, And then this is looking, it's pretty stretched the more you go off of it, but I think it's fine once, I mean, those parts are going to be masked out for the most part. So maybe I didn't explain it best earlier, but if I used, so issue with creating these textures, it's all based on the original shape. And if I were to use position, it would be independent of that. You'd have position just wherever a point is at any given time. But let's say if you have material right here, and if you're just off by a little bit, you're gonna get inconsistencies in the strength or even color, so that like that yellow point right here disappears as we move closer to the x-axis. If you just focus on that one thing, you can kind of see what the problem there is. So I'm going to reset that position, Alt G. And so that's why we're using a 2D texture and just dealing with that distortion. Let's see, if we, so that displacement's good. We could probably adjust this Voronoi texture and the thickness, maybe to get more sprinkles, but let's see how it looks first. So these sprinkles are basically plastic, so I'm not going to really do much. Like the default textures in 3D graphics are pretty, usually looks good in plastic. It's solid colors, roughness is kind of, in the middle, and then there's a lot of subsurface. I mean, plastic does have some, depending on like the hardness of it. Like Legos don't have a lot of subsurface, but they have some. Okay, so I'm still getting some sprinkles there. It's pretty low density, so let's try to fix all that. If I use this greater than node and multiply, it's supposed to mask that out, which it seems to be doing. Okay, so let's increase this so we don't get as many apart. So I think we're going to need to shift this up. I think we can just use either add or multiply. So it's a still a sharp line. If I I'll just go ahead and use another greater than node. So I create a reroute node there, and then with Control Shift D, I can copy it with the same connection. I'm just going to bring that over there, and and so I'm going to use this instead, so I can control this multiplier right there. And so if I bring this up, make sure I'm previewing this, so right shift click. So let's look at them results. Yeah, it's pretty good. We're getting some sprinkles out on the side here. So let's see what we can do about that. Might be because we need to clamp this. When we multiply. So this is the mask we're getting here, and then the displacement is also needs to be multiplied by this greater than node. So one of these is the mask and one of these is the height. So it's still, let's increase this. Let's try 0.1. Go into material preview since that's being a bit slow. Yeah. So, okay. Let's try. So here we have the sprinkles. We're just getting stretched there, so let's bring that back to 0.1. To see if that's working. Alright, and that's a bit long. And yeah, so now I'm seeing that these are all a bit big. What we can do is just scale these all from the first vector right here. Select all these with, I think if we pick this outermost node, press L a bunch of times, it links everything. It's select linked for everything that's goes backwards. So we can take the time to organize some of this. It's ideally something you want to do along the way, but I was kind of speeding through stuff. So sprinkles. Yeah. This doesn't belong there, so Alt J. So Alt J. Where's it? Control J. Yeah, Control J. There you go. And then just I don't want to frame on that yet. So and then this we can press Control J as well. And so this will be our donut, or just call it the torus, because that's like the geometric shape. And right here we have the frosting material. And the bread. So this part. Include the texture coordinate in there. So if I just bring this out to separate it, spread, just call it BSTF. It's like the name of this material shader. It's principal BSTF. And then here we can make this the frosting. Yeah, and so all we have left is the sprinkles right here. Sprinkles, STF. And then we have sprinkles. Let's adjust the scale a little bit. So if you look at this label, there's sprinkles. I'm just gonna put it off So alpha is like this black and white height map. Yeah, so let's see if we can get away with just adjusting the scale with this vector math node. So let's converter vector math. So that's going to make them really small. I think the bigger number, the smaller it's going to be. Yeah. Let's try 1.8. See how that looks. Pretty good. Let's try 2.3. They're just random numbers that just kind of feel right based on what I'm seeing. Actually, try 2. Well, that looks good. Until you go down there. But I think this gets masked out, right? If we look right here. We're getting sprinkles on the bottom as well. So to fix this, we just need to make sure that so in the texture coordinate, we use this absolute value to mirror this. We just want to use this z value right here. So this version isn't mirrored. If we look at this, we're just going to replace that. So if I add this node here, just bring this up. Greater than value. So we can make sure that's what we want there. If we preview that. And then adjusting this. Okay, so this is normal output. So that's again the wrong output. You can use right here the donut. I think this is before it's mirrored. Use that let's get the sprinkles there. So let's see what this all looks like. Oh, that makes me happy. Yeah. So I guess I could call it kind of works having like just, sprinkles on the ground, right? I think for your benefit, I think you'd benefit more from just trying this out and making this something that you, just do this for yourself and see if you can make it better than me. And I think you'll learn a lot, and I hope I was able to clearly explain all of this. And that's the part that's really important to me with this video. And so I'm just gonna do a few things to make this look good. Sharpen this pinkness right here. So if I sample this, we can see how pink it is. And then we have this single light right here, but let's add an HDRI. So go to downloads, HDR. Save this so we don't forget. And then this is a lot, kind of too bright for my control. Because I want to have that directional light right there. We can change this to the under film and transparent, so we don't see the background right there. So we can kind of see subsurface on this segment here. When you're looking to make sure there are good shadows, look at the brightest points, look at those mid-sharp points in the transitions, I think is key. And like the darker part on the end, like that's what makes something realistic. Keep that in mind if you're ever drawing something. But yeah, so that looks, I like the frosting. I like it. We can make this slightly pink. So you see them more in the preview than in the final render. There's a lot more red. And then, so if I use this, so it's not perfect. There's some more I need to do with the masking right here, and that's pretty much just finding the right mask for that. Let's try if I just use this. This is going to mask the donut right there. If I bring that up there, then we won't have the bottom side sorted out. So I'll use another multiply node just to do that over here. So I'm going to increase this, sample that. So top view, this will give us the same without the, So this is actually already mask, so let's just try. Okay, that's working. That's what I know. We have it on both sides, so I'm gonna use normal, and then separated XYZ, and then multiply this. So right there, and then to clamp this and this. Let's see. I think, yeah, and this normal will be different when, let's just see how that looks. Okay. Oh man. So let's bring things back to how they were. Just gonna revert this back to when I saved it. Yeah, so you can play around with this more, just to see your final result. And I'll be following through this tutorial myself and seeing what I could be doing differently. So yeah, thanks for watching.